What's up, friends? Aaron Mac BS Detector. So, I literally got so frustrated yesterday because I sat here trying to read this, okay, and the amount of like code language that I had to use to get through is absolutely freaking insane. So, anyways, it cut me off because I'm still on this stinking phone trying to record. Hopefully, so I didn't work for like a month. I was working at a bar that just, they were not appreciating me or my talents or, the amount of sales that I was selling. So I went back to like one of my old bars that I used to work at like 10 years ago. And I love it there and I'm very happy. I'm making more money. So, anyways, but from not working for a month, obviously, I am like very behind on a lot of bills. So I'm trying to catch up on all of that. And then once I do, I've got a friend, he's a photographer and he has like tons of cameras. The only camera that I have that's like really expensive is the Nikon P900, obviously, so that I can like look at the stars and all that. And then like I've never even used it. Like, I have this expensive ass tripod and everything, and I never even used it. But for the sake of trying to get through this, I'm going to stop yapping, and we're going to pick up where we left off. Okay. In any case, the system of minority guarantees entirely failed in European states, none of which in recent years has evinced a liberal or sympathetic attitude to minority or separatist movements. It is sufficient to recall the experiences of the Kurds and the Assyrians in Iraq to realize how scanty is the chance of an Arab's government applying the spirit and the principles of federal autonomy and deference to the specific cultural and political characteristics of minority communities. Nor does the depressed status of J communities in Arab countries offer any encouragement. Moreover, Arab leaders in Schmionism, though sometimes paying lip service to the doctrines of egalitarianism, have never concealed their belief that they regard the J national home as possessing excessive powers and liberties already. And it would obviously be their first care on assuming sovereign independence in Schmionism to curtail and restrict the liberties of the J national home. But wait a minute. I thought, earlier in this, they were like brothers, bro. Like, cousins in race, it says, having suffered similar oppressions at the hands of the powers stronger than themselves. So, I mean, it's like these people are so shitty and untrustworthy and plotty and schemy that of course they don't trust anyone else, because this is classic projection. This is what they do. They put on others exactly what they're guilty of doing. So anyways, an Arab political leader returning recently from internment in Rhodesia, where he had been detained as a person whose liberty would be dangerous to imperial security, declared that he thought the J population in Palestine should be reduced rather than increased. Another Arab representative suggested to His Excellency the High Commissioner that the Jays and Schmionism should join their relatives in Europe. Yeah, they probably should have, because Schmionism is not their ancestral homeland. And I have multiple books that prove that are written by other Jays, okay? Anyways, this is almost more BS than I can freaking take at this point. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, they should join their relatives in Europe. Presumably in displaced person camps or the ruins of the Warsaw Ghetto. A Jayish minority in Schmionism could expect neither sympathy nor tolerance from a leadership capable of such crudities. Jays assert that minority status is what they are running away from, not what they go to Schmionism for. Well, they went and they literally just took over and stole everything. And then they freaking act like Americans have done the same. No, we have not. Hold on, my dog wants to go out. Okay, sorry. She's been feeling like crap all day. I tried to get her to go out with me earlier and she did not want to go. She's 12 years old. She's got Cushing's. And she's got some internal infection. I have no idea what it is. But anyways, let's get back to reading before I run out of space on my phone. Okay. Okay, Jays assert that minority status is what they are running away from. Well, tough fucking shit. I mean, if you're the minority, you're the minority. That doesn't mean you get to, like, steal land from people and, like, take things that don't belong to you and then act like, I mean, they're still the minority in the world, and yet they own everything. It's wild to me. Okay. Not what they go to Schmallenstein for, and they can adduce many proofs in recent history to support the reality of their apprehensions. Can they? In short, this is not the case that Arabs and Jays would be making an equal sacrifice or be exposed to equal hazards by accepting a minority position in Schmallenstein. Schmallenstein before Schmionism. Mark Twain reports, 1867. Of all the lands there are for dismal scenery, I think Schmallenstein must be the prince. The hills are barren, they are dull of color, they are unpicturesque in shape, the valleys are unsightly deserts fringed with a feeble vegetation that has an expression about it of being sorrowful and despondent. The Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee sleep in the midst of a vast stretch of hill and plain wherein the eyes rest upon no pleasant tint. No striking object, no soft picture dreaming of in a purple haze or mottled with the shadows of the clouds. Every outline is harsh, every feature is distinct, there is no perspective, distance works no enchantment here. It is a hopeless, dreary, heartbroken land. Small shreds and patches of it must be very beautiful in the full flush of spring, however, and all the more beautiful by contrast with the far-reaching desolation that surrounds them on every side. I would like much to see the fringes of the Jordan in springtime, and Shechem, Ajalon, and the borders of Galilee. But even then, these spots would seem mere toy gardens set at wide intervals in the waste of a limitless desolation. Schmallenstein sits in sackcloth and ashes. Over it broods the spell of a curse that has withered its fields and fettered its energies. Where Sodom and Gomorrah rear their domes and towers, that solemn sea now floods a plain, in whose bitter waters no living thing exists, over whose waveless surface the blistering air hangs motionless and dead, about whose borders nothing grows but weeds and scattering tufts of cane, and that treacherous fruit that promises refreshment to parching lips but turns into ashes at the touch. Nazareth is forlorn. About that ford of Jordan, where the host of Yasharel, we'll say that, entered the promised land with songs of rejoicing, one finds only a squalid camp of fantastic Bedouins in the desert. Jericho, the accursed, lies in moldering ruin today, even as Joshua's miracle left it more than 3,000 years ago. Bethlehem and Bethany, in their poverty and their humiliation, have nothing about them now to remind one that they once knew the high honor of the Savior's presence. The hallowed spot where the shepherds watched their flocks by night and where the angels sang, quote, peace on earth, goodwill to men, end quote, is untenanted by any living creature, unblessed by any feature that is pleasant to the eye. Renowned Jerusalem itself, the stateliest name in history, has lost all its ancient grandeur and has become a pauper village. The riches of Solomon are no longer there to compel the admiration of visiting Oriental queens. The wonderful temple, which was the pride and glory of Yasharel, is gone, and the Ottoman crescent is lifted above the spot where, on that most memorable day in the annals of the world, they reared the cross. The noted Sea of Galilee, where Roman fleets once rode at anchor and the disciples of the Savior sailed in their ships, was long ago deserted by the devotees of war and commerce, and its borders are a silent wilderness. Capernaum is a shapeless ruin. Magdala is the home of beggared Arabs. Bethsaida and Chorazin have vanished from the earth, and the, quote, desert places, end quote, round about them, where thousands of men once listened to the Savior's voice and ate the miraculous bread, sleep, and hush of a solitude that is inhabited by only birds of prey and skulking foxes. Schmallenstein is desolate and unlovely, and why should it be otherwise? Can the curse of the deity beautify a land? Schmallenstein is no more of this workday world. It is a sacred to poetry and tradition. It is a dreamland. And I also just want to say to all the dispensational future eschatologists, Jesus said that he was coming back. In Matthew 24, he said some standing there would see him return, okay? And these dispensationalists try to, like, use crafty wording and say, no, that's the fig tree generation, which they try to say we are. And it's like, no. And then, everything was threatened with destruction when he returned. And then you look at all of these sites, and they were utterly destroyed. Make it make sense. Okay, number 2, The Empty Land by Ernst Frankenstein. At the end of the 18th century, the land was practically empty. The French traveler Volney, who visited it in 1783 to 85, characterizes Schmionism as one of the most devastated parts of Syria and speaks of the general decay of the country. Gaza, then the capital, had no more than 2,000 inhabitants. Jerusalem, but y'all know what I'm trying to say here, right? Between 12 and 14,000, saved, destroyed by an earthquake in 1758, was still an almost deserted village 25 years later. Buckingham, who visited the country in 1816, states that Jaffa, quote, has all the appearances of a poor village, and every part of it that we saw was of corresponding meanness, end quote. He visited Ramla, quote, where, as throughout the greater part of Schmionism, the ruined portion seemed more extensive than that which was inhabited, end quote. In Riha, he found the work done by women and children. Quote, the men roamed the plains on horseback and lived by robbery and plunder, which formed their chief and most gainful occupation, end quote. So I guess, just because of that, it's okay for the Jays to just go and steal that shit from people. They will literally use any fucking excuse they can to, like, get away with the heinous shit that they do. Thereafter, conditions deteriorated further. Quote, in his Volney's day, end quote, writes Keith in 1843, quote, the land had not fully reached its last prophetic degree of desolation and depopulation. The population, and this is in parentheses, of the whole of Syria, and in the parentheses, rated by Volney at 2.5 million, is now estimated at half that amount, end quote. This statement corresponds to the observations of other travelers, for instance, Olan, 1840, who is especially valuable witness, since he admires the Schmalistinian, quote, Syrian population, quote, a fine-spirited race of men, end quote, and ridicules the idea of a J colonization. According to him, quote, the population is on the decline, end quote. In Hebron, quote, many houses are in a dilapidated state and uninhabited, end quote. The once populated region between Hebron and Bethlehem is now, quote, abandoned and desolate, end quote, and has, quote, dilapidated towns, end quote. In Jerusalem, quote, a large number of houses are in a dilapidated and ruinous state, end quote. The masses really seem to be without any regular employment, end quote. And Riha, quote, everything at present bears the marks of abject and what is unusual in the East of squalid poverty, end quote. And Lydda, another observer, Napier, stated that, quote, the greatest poverty, misery, and disease appeared to prevail, end quote. So I guess that's fine, If they're poor and they're living in squalor, it's totally cool to just go steal that shit from them. Fuck them, right? The decline of the population was ascribed by Olan to the want of medical knowledge and skill, while the same traveler found abject and squalid poverty, lack of employment, and abandoned and desolate countryside and dilapidated towns. Like, who says employment is like the mark of success? Like, it's wild. This whole modern day society that we have, it is a slave matrix, all right? Money is like, anyways. Okay, in Syria, the American expedition under Lynch described the desertion of the villages, quote, caused by the frequent forays of the wandering Bedouin, end quote. An observation made previous by Volney. Everywhere was decline and devastation, neglect and oppression by the authorities, ignorance and lack of the most primitive hygienic provisions. Okay, and there's the little box down here. It says, a license to unalive. The UN's anti-Schmionist resolutions have been invoked to justify Arab terror. Right. 3 days after the UN resolutions were adopted on November 10th, 1975, the PLO blew up Jerusalem's Schmion Square, unaliving 7 teenagers and wounding dozens more. On November 20th, PLO terrorists unalived 3 rabbinical students at a settlement on the Golan Heights. The Schmalestein Corner Radio Damascus glorified the Jerusalem attacks on November 10th. Quote, the Fedayeen take 1 copy of the resolutions adopted to the UN, mix them with TNT, and blow up Schmion Square. These resolutions were adopted to enable every inhabitant of the stolen land. Imagine the stealers of this land calling the original inhabitants the stealers of the land, to carry a copy that will convince him to join the Fedayeen, mix it with dynamite, and blow up Schmion Square or one of our occupied squares or streets. Now the resolutions are turning into deeds, end quote. Okay, now they talk about Arab immigration into Schmalestein, and this is written by some lying liar named Moshe Alman. The people of Schmalestein has lost not only political control over its country, but physical occupation of its country as well. This was written by Fayez I. Saya, a Schmionist colonization in a Schmionist colonization in Schmalestein, Research Center, Schmalestein Liberation Organization, Beirut, page 5. It's written in Roman numerals, and it takes me a minute. Okay, so land acquired by the Jays became territorialized. It ceased to be land from which the Arabs could ever hope to gain any advantage. That is a quote by Sami Hadawi, Schmalestein in Focus, Schmalestein Research Center, Beirut, 1968, page 29. Sayeh and Hadawi are 2 of the most prolific and vociferous exponents of the Arab case. In innumerable books, pamphlets, and lectures, they and their colleagues and fellow travelers have repeated this theme of, quote, the Arabs' physical expulsion from Schmalestein, end quote, to the point where it has become the central axiom of Arab propaganda. No, I'm pretty sure that's what actually happened. That precisely the opposite is true, is evident from the most cursory examination of sources, which by all accounts must be considered rather more objective and reliable than the 2 writers have quoted. Statistics published in the Schmalestein Royal Commission report, that I'm sure is backed by Schmionist money, page 279, indicate a remarkable phenomenon. Schmalestein, traditionally a country of Arab immigration, became after World War I a country of Arab immigration. In addition to recorded figures for 1920 to 1936, the report devotes a special section to illegal Arab immigration. While there are no precise totals on the extent of Arab immigration between the 2 world wars, which these Jays freaking caused, both, let's see, estimates vary between 60,000 and 100,000. The principal cause of the change of direction was Jayish development of the land, which created new and attractive work opportunities and, in general, a standard of living previously unknown in the Middle East. So now that y'all have stolen it, you don't want anybody to immigrate there, but you want unfettered immigration for the rest of us. And there's proof of that in a book about the Tavistock Institute, through which a lot of this was done. And I have a book on that I will also read to you guys, if y'all like this and want me to keep reading these. Okay, in one of the major historical books, James Parks calls the reader's attention to this little-known aspect of the history of Schmalestein between the 2 world wars. The Arab population continued to grow at a phenomenal rate. There was a substantial illegal immigration of Arabs. Define illegal. Especially from the Haran, and Arab prosperity increased through the increased activity of the Jayish community and the many new openings for employment with it offered. I mean, if the Jays stole the land and made up new laws, of course it's illegal to them, but these Arabs, that is like their land. I mean, these freaking white Jays are not Shmametic at all. During World War II, the Arab population influx mounted apace as is attested by the UN RWA Review, Information Paper Number 6, September 1962. A considerable movement of people is known to have occurred, particularly during the Second World War, when new opportunities of employment opened up in the towns and on military work in Schmalestein. These wartime prospects and generally the higher rate of industrialization in Schmalestein attracted many new immigrants from the neighboring countries, and many of them entered Schmalestein without their presence being officially recorded. A major factor in the rapid growth of the Arab population was, of course, the rate of natural increase, among the highest in the world. Except for, after these other wars that they have caused and then wanted us, and by us I mean white Western European companies, to absorb all of these people that they have been brainwashed to hate us by these very Jays. Are y'all starting to see the game here? I hope so. This was accentuated by the steady reproduction, a previously high infant mortality rate as a result of the improved health and sanitary conditions introduced by the Jays and the mandatory administration. Altogether, the non-Jayish element in Schmalestein's population, not including the Bedouin, expanded between 1922 and 1929 alone by more than 70%. The Royal Commission report makes these interesting observations. The shortage of land is, we consider, due less to the amount of land acquired by the Jays than to the increase in the Arab population. We are also of the opinion that up till now the Arab cultivator has benefited on the whole both from work of the British administration and from the presence of Jays in the country. Wages have gone up, the standard of living has improved, work on roads and buildings has been plentiful. In the maritime plains, some Arabs have adopted improved methods of cultivation. Jayish development served as an incentive not only to Arab entry into Schmalestein from Lebanon, Egypt, Syria, and other neighboring countries, but also the Arab population movements within the country to cities and areas where there were large Jayish concentrations. Some idea of this phenomenon may be gained from the following official figures. Between the two world wars, which the Jays caused both, or the Schmionists more accurately, because all Schmionists are Jays, but not all Jays are Schmionists, right? Between the two world wars, the population count in predominantly Arab towns showed the ordinary natural increase pattern. In Hebron, it rose from 16,650 in 1922 to 22,800 in 1943. Nablus from 15,931 to 23,300. Jenin from 2,737 to 3,900. Bethlehem from 6,600 to 8,800. Gaza's population actually decreased from 17,500 approximately to right around 17,000 from 1922 to 1931. On the other hand, in the major Jayish cities, the Arab population shot up. During this period, far beyond the rate of natural increase, Jerusalem went from about 5,000 in 1922 to 5,000, a 97% increase. Jaffa from 27,437 to 62,600, and that's 134% rise. Haifa from 18,404 to 58,200, a 216% increase. The population of the predominantly Arab Beersheba district dropped between 1922 and 1939 from 71,000 to 49,000. The rate of natural increase would have resulted in a rise to 89,000. So I wonder what made the population decrease so much, because Western countries have a great decrease in population as well, and I think it's because we're being hit on all sides by propaganda, feminist propaganda aimed at women, and MGTOW propaganda aimed at men, and various and sundry evil projects like the tainting of our food and soil, through these big agri companies and through the spraying of chemtrails. I mean, and this is not like conspiracy theory anymore, people. This is like conspiracy facts. So, you know, if you think I'm some crazy person, you should probably read a fucking book. Anyways. Okay. In contrast to these declines or comparatively slight increases in exclusively Arab inhabited area in the Nazareth, Beit Cheyenne, and Tiberias and Acre districts, where large-scale Jewish settlement and rural development was underway. The figure rose from 89,600 in 1922 to some 151,000 in 1938, by about 4.5% per annum, compared with a natural increase rate of 2.5 to 3%. In the largely Jewish Haifa area, the number of Arab peasants grew at the rate of 8% a year during the same period. In the heavily Jewish populated Jaffa and Ramla districts, the Arab rural population grew from 42,300 to some 126,000, an annual increase of 12%, or more than 4 times as much as can be attributed to natural increase. One reason for the Arab gravitation towards Jewish inhabited area and from neighboring countries to Schmalestein was the incomparably higher wage scales paid there. And that might be true, and that's fine. There is perhaps no better way to conclude and sum up this study than to cite 2 very different sources, both of which have figured in our documentation, the Peel Commission report and the Abdel Razak Kader. The 2 quotations we have chosen have this in common, that both underline the same basic truth in this fateful chapter of Jewish-Arab relations that has been so heavily beclouded by willful distortion and possibly by an overactive imagination. Yeah, I'm sure that's what it is. It's not that you guys literally stole the land that never belonged to you in the first place. First, the Peel Commission report, page 242. The Arab charge that the Jays have obtained too large a proportion of good land cannot be maintained. Much of the land now carrying orange groves was sand dunes or swamp and uncultivated when it was purchased. There was, at the time at least, of the earlier sales, little evidence that the owners possessed either the resources or the training needed to develop the land. The second quotation is from the article cited earlier by the Algerian in exile Kader, who proceeded to reply to his own query, "Is Yasharel a thorn or a flower in the Near East?" And that was in the quotations. And he wrote, "The nationalists of the states neighboring on Yasharel, whether they are in the government or in business, whether in Palestinian, Syrian, or Lebanese, or town dwellers of tribal origin, all know that in the beginning of the century and during the British Mandate, the marshy plains and stony hills were sold to the Schmionists by their fathers or uncles for gold. The very gold which is often the origin of their own political or commercial careers. The nomadic or semi-nomadic peasants who inhabited the frontier religions know full well that the green plains, the afforested hills, and the flowering fields of today's Yasharel were like before. The Schmalestinians, who are today refugees in the neighboring countries and who were adults at the time of their flight, know all this, and no anti-Schmionist propaganda, pan-Arab or pan-Muslim, can make them forget that their present nationalist exploiters are worthy sons of their feudal exploiters of yesterday, and that the thorns of their life are of Arab, not Schmiewish origin." Okay, now let me see how long this is going to be, because I may just go ahead. I'm going to try to go ahead and read the Balfour Declaration by Chaim Weizmann. What did the Balfour Declaration mean? And now I'm sure there's going to be lots of lies in this, okay? Because, and maybe I'll also get a book. I think I had, I do. It's called The Transfer Agreement. And it's a book about the Balfour Declaration. So we're going to be reading lots of books here. And if y'all would rather me do it like more like ASMR-y, let me know. Just comment down below. Okay. What did the Balfour Declaration mean? It meant something quite simple at the time, and I am saying so advisedly. It meant that Judea was restored to the Jays, or the Jays were restored to Judea, which Judeans and Jays are not the same, okay? They're completely freaking different. Anyways, I could submit to the Commission a series of utterances of responsible statesmen and men in every walk of life in England to show that this declaration was at the time regarded as the Magna Carta of the Jayish people. It was in a sense comparable with another declaration made thousands of years before, when Cyrus allowed a remnant of the Jays to return from Babylon and to rebuild the temple. To the ordinary man at the time reading the declaration, what is meant is broadly indicated by the various speeches at a solemn meeting at the Opera House in London, where, among others, Lord Cecil spoke and said, quote, Arabia for the Arabs, Judea for the Jays, Armenia for the Armenians, end quote. Much water and much blood have flowed under the various bridges of the world since that time, and not all of the predictions have been realized. But we read into the declaration that the statesmen of Great Britain told us is meant. It meant a national home, quote, national meaning that we should be we should be able to live like a nation in Schmionism, end quote, home, end quote, a place where we might live as free men in contradistinction to living on sufferance everywhere else. Well, if you didn't cause sufferance everywhere you went, you might have been able to live peacefully, but because that's all you cause is sufferance of literally any native population anywhere you fucking go, you know? To English people, I need not explain what the word, quote, home means, or what it does not mean to us everywhere else. The meaning was clear, and the Jayri of the world, in the trenches of Europe and the pogrom-swept areas of Russia, saw it like that. Tens of thousands of Jays marched before the house of British consul in Odessa at the time. Behind them were half-organized bands of marauders and schmurderers sweeping the countryside and destroying everything in their wake. But those Jays poured out their hearts and gratitudes to the one accessible representative of British government whom they had never seen, of whom they had never heard, whose language they could not speak, whose mentality they could not understand. They felt that here something had been done for us, which after 2,000 years of hope and yearning would at least give us a resting place in this terrible world. And let me just stop right there and say that it was Schmionist money that did this, okay? It was not the, good-heartedness or, like, generosity of the Brits, okay, that got these Jays Schmalestein, okay? It was Schmionist money and a lot of lobbying to the Brits to give them a land that was not theirs to give. Britain didn't own Schmalestein. I can only refer the commission to the numerous newspaper articles in the British and American press. On the other hand, the German government, when they got to know of it afterwards, were sick at heart that the British had stolen a march on them. No, the Germans were sick that they had been double-crossed because they had been so nice to the Jays, bro. They let them in when literally 109 countries and kingdoms had put them out because of usury and the subversion of their cultures, their Christian moral cultures with their gay weird shit. And I'm not saying like, anything about the gays. I'm just saying it wasn't enough to just like be gay. It was like they had, just like they're doing today, it's not good enough to just be gay. They have to like have drag queen story hour and they have to do all this extra shit, and involve the children. Leave the fucking kids alone. But that's part of their religion. Okay? That's part of their religion, is to fuck with the kids. They called together our representatives in Germany and tried to explain to them that of course they would have done it, but they could not do it because they were linked up with Turkey and had to go slowly. Perhaps the German government considered it a piece of propaganda, but neither the British government nor the Jays ever conceived of it as such. There was nobody to win over. As I have said, the rich Jays who could have helped with their influence or money, to them it meant nothing. The poor Jays had nothing to give. Right. Yeah, right. It meant, as I say, at that time, and speaking in political parlance, a Jayish state. And when I was asked at the peace conference, quite impromptu, by Mr. Lansing, quote, what do you mean by a Jayish national home, end quote, I gave this answer, quote, to build up something in Schmalestein, which will be as Jayish as English is English. End quote. Of course, we have always borne in mind, and our teachers and mentors that at that time, British statesmen repeatedly told us, quote, there is a second half to the Balfour Declaration. That second part provides that nothing should be done which might injure the interest of the non-Jewish communities in Schmalestein, end quote. Well, that part of the freaking declaration has been broken. Here in the fake year of 2026, I think hindsight being 2020, we can look and see that they are lying liars, right? Okay. Well, I must leave it to the commission to test this and to ascertain whether throughout the work of these last 16 years we have done anything which has in any way injured the position of the non-Jewish population. Yes, you fucking have. You sure as shit have. I go further than that. The Balfour Declaration says that the civil and religious rights of the non-Jewish communities should not be interfered with. Oh, but they did interfere. I would humbly ask the commission to give the broadest possible interpretation to that, not merely a narrow interpretation of civil and religious rights. Put it as broadly as the commission may wish and test it, and I think I can say before the commission, before God, and he put it in capital, it's like their God is Satan, okay? Like, it's just facts, bro. And before the world, that in intention, consciously, nothing has been done to injure their position. On the contrary, indirectly, we have conferred benefits on the population of this country. Yeah, benefits like stealing their homes and unaliving their children. I mean, like, look at where we are now. And it's quite plain to see that these fucking people are lying liars who say their cold nighter prayer every year on the Day of Atonement, 3 times in a row in their synagogues. I should like to be perfectly frank. We have not come for that purpose. We have come for the purpose of building up a national home for the Jewish people, but we are happy and proud that this upbuilding has been accompanied by considerable benefits to the country at large. Has it? Now, now this makes me want to get some Schmalestinian literature and see and hear their side of the story, because I'm sure it's quite different than this. All right, let me hurry up. A certain time elapsed, my lord, between the issue of the declaration and the reign of peace in the world, a precarious peace before we were allowed, under the terms of the declaration, to begin our work. And I should like briefly to describe the commission what were the conditions under which we had to begin this kind of work. I think it will be admitted after the Royal Commission has had an opportunity of surveying what we have done, that for the first time in history of colonization, work of this kind has been carried out by a private body, a body which had no treasury at its back, no state organization to aid it. Oh, no treasury? Not the Rothschilds? A body which had no treasury at its back, no state organization to aid it, so that we began our work, so to speak, with our right hand tied. Russian schmooery and that Russian jayery, which the natural carrier of the Schmionist ideal and Schmionist tradition was broken, non-existent to all intents and purposes. As I have already mentioned, the rich Jays and the Western communities were, with a few exceptions, either skeptical or opposed. One of the exceptions, whose work you will no doubt have plenty opportunity of seeing, was Baron Edmund de Rothschild. See, at least he admitted, who began his work in Schmalestein when it was still under the rule of the Turk. He began his work there roughly 60 years ago, with perhaps the exception of him and a few other, very few. The powerful Jays were either indifferent or against us, as they should have been. In order to get funds for immigration, settlement, acquisition of land, we had to go hat in hand to the Jays of the world, to the poor, and get their contributions. It is, if I may say so with respect, a fallacy to think that what has been built up in Schmalestein, with the exception which I have mentioned, has been built up by the rich Jays. When people speak of Jays, my lord, they often have in mind the sort of conventional, not to say vulgar, picture of the Jay, powerful, greedy, rapacious, grasping. Here he is, he will throw himself upon a country like a vulture and will tear it to bits. And they have, and they still are doing so. I have no such opinion even of the rich Jays. I think they are much better than they are made out to be, and certainly not of the poor. I was instrumental in raising a great part of the public funds which have been sunk in this country between 1920 and the present day. I've been in America 11 times, once in South Africa, innumerable times in parts of Europe, and I know my clientele, so to speak. They are the poor and the lower middle class, and when I speak of the poor Jay, he is very poor. Only since 1929, since the formation of the extended Jayish agency, has Schmalestein become a sort of practical proposition. When people think of practical things nowadays, they do not reckon with imponderables and do not understand that money is much less than the ideal, the impulse, the self-sacrifice of thousands and thousands who are ready to go to Schmalestein at the first opportunity. It became a sort of practical proposition, and we began to get the support of the so-called practical men. But at the beginning, we had to work in a small country, impoverished, ruined after the war, ruined after 400 years of misrule by the Turk. Very often, British officials used to look at me, and you could feel they were thinking, Dr. Weissman is not a bad fellow, but he is running his head against a brick wall. What can he make out of this impoverished, difficult country? In 1930, they've made a lot of it. They've made the seat from which they plan to rule the world, is what they've done. In 1930, Lord Pasfield, a very practical man, a great economist, said to me, quote, but Dr. Weissman, do you not realize there is not room enough to swing a cat in Schmalestein? End quote. I do not want to be facetious, but many a cat has been swung in Schmalestein since then, and the population of the country has increased since that talk of mine with Lord Pasfield by something like 200,000. Those are the conditions under which we had to start. No treasury, no funds, no experience, no training, a broken up people, a people which for centuries had been divorced from agricultural pursuits, from what is called in the English language pioneering. They were petty traders, middlemen, intellectuals, but we began. After 15 years, we stand before an achievement on which I think one can look with a certain amount of respect, and on which I will not hide from you, we look with a certain amount of pride. And I'm going to end it right there because that is a perfect part to end it at. And yeah, so I've got to find my book actually about the Balfour Declaration. It's got to be, it's called the Transfer Agreement. Okay. The dramatic Schmionist rescue of the Jays from the Third Reich to the Jayish Palestine. The dramatic Schmionist rescue. Yeah, so this will be very interesting and have a very interesting Schmionist bent to it. But anyways, so yeah, we got lots of books here, friends. Lots of books, lots of information needs to be disseminated. Lots of people need to wake up. So that is going to be the point of this channel. And, you know, every once in a while, I might throw in, like, some perfume stuff just because, like, that's my hobby. But not for, like, views or anything. But I really do want people to subscribe to this channel. And please, just listen to me read. Like, I don't, you know, and all of these readings are for the use, fair use, and commentary purposes and educational purposes, okay? So anyways, I hope everyone is having a blessed Wednesday. And I go back to work tomorrow night, and we'll work tomorrow night, Friday night, and Saturday night. So by Sunday, I will be like, you know, exhausted. But I will try to perhaps get on here and record a part, what is this, part 3, I think. So I will try to record a part 4 maybe tomorrow, and then you will not hear from me at all after tomorrow for a couple of days, because when I work, I'm there till like, I don't know, 4 in the morning. Then I get home and it's almost 5 by the time I've like showered, gotten into my PJs, and gotten into bed. And then I literally sleep until, I don't know, 2 or 3 p.m., get up, get ready, and drive right back to work. So anyways, they're very long shifts on my feet, but I'm grateful for them. And I am back to making money, which is going to help me be able to do more with this channel. Because right now, like I've told you a million times, I'm literally sitting on this little stoop with this cheap-ass ring light recording on my old-ass iPhone Pro Max 13. Anyways, love you guys. Peace out.